To start, and welcome everybody to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 27, 2014. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Lennon?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Polika?
Here.
Piana?
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you, and we have a quorum. The next item of business then would be the approval of the agenda. What is council's pleasure on the agenda this evening?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
I support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Piana. Any discussion? Marnie?
Council members Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. So moving on now to presentations. Our first presentation this evening is the Ferndale Police Department Unit Commendations and a Certificate of Merit. And our Police Chief Collins will present those.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is this on?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Now it is.
We have two circumstances that we want to recognize this evening. The first one is Officer Matt Goebel. Matt is a undercover officer, although he wanted to be here. So we suggest that he not be here. But this is an extraordinary feat that he pulled off with the assistance of the Detroit Police Department. On March 24th, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we had an armed robbery that occurred at 808 Livernois, which is a doctor's office. What occurred was that an armed masked gunman entered 808 Livernois with the intention of robbing a doctor's office of their currency. When he was told there was no currency on the site, he stole a blank prescription pad and fled. The officer set up a perimeter. We called in a canine officer. We searched, but were unable to locate him. Officer Goebel, who is assigned to narcotics, but also assists us with these type of, our narcotics team will assist us with a hardcore kind of crime. He was assigned this case to assist. A tip led to the name of a suspect who was identified as Ray Lynn Slayton. Mr. Slayton is a career criminal. He was released from prison just this past May. In 2013, he was serving time for bank robbery, prison escape, breaking and entering, and auto theft. Also, the Detroit Police Department was currently looking for Mr. Slayton in a homicide that occurred prior to our armed robbery. On April 14th, Officer Goebel, assigned to the narcotics enforcement team, was given this information to follow up and to find Mr. Slayton. It was determined that Mr. Slayton had used a bridge card at the 7-Eleven in the area of 10 Mile and Hoover. Officer Goebel spoke with the clerk and another person who reported that Slayton was possible driving a black-colored pickup truck. A few days later, Slayton used his bridge card at Kroger's. The surveillance video showed that Slayton was with a female, and a Kroger rewards card was used as well. With the assistance of the Kroger folks, Officer Goebel was contacted the corporate office, and we found out who that was. He found out who that was involved in, who owned that Kroger card, and that individual is in prison. It's kind of like a story from. Officer Goebel did several investigations. The person was led to an address in Warren in the 10 Mile and Hoover area. Officer Goebel checked the house and located a dark-colored pickup that was similar to the witness to describe that Mr. Slayton had been driving. On April 19th, Officer Goebel was able to place Slayton in an 8 Mile and Grossbeck area. He checked the motel in the area. He showed the night clerk a picture of Slayton. Officer Goebel asked if Slayton looked familiar or was at the motel, and the night clerk said that he looked familiar but did not know if he was at the motel. Officer Goebel asked to see the motel's registration cards. Upon looking at one of the cards, Goebel determined that the person who was registered in room 32 was the person who lived in the home on Warren, where the female that drove the truck was registered to. The occupant was then described as a white male with a height of about 5'5". Officer Goebel set up and watched the motel room. He was assisted by an undercover unit from the Detroit Police Department, who was also working on their murder case. The motel clerk called Officer Goebel and told him that a person who was registered in room 32 was taller than 5'5", and he reported that he looked like Slayton. The call out to Detroit Special Response Team was done. A search warrant was completed by the Detroit Police. Detroit SRT and Officer Goebel made contact with the individual in that room and found to be Mr. Slayton, who had changed his appearance by shaving off his hair and removing his beard and mustache. He was transported to the Total Police, to the Detroit Police Department, where he's booked. He's being held on their murder charge, and he awaits trial on our armed robbery charge. Officer Goebel dedicated more than 80 hours to this particular investigation within that short period of time, and we were able to arrest this individual who was, quite frankly, we're much safer with him off the streets. So Officer Goebel is the second highest award that we can issue at the local level, a certificate of merit. This one will be shorter, but it's also a very good job by our officers. We have Officer Cleveland, Officer Bergnoli, Officer Cousdale is not here tonight. You guys can step up, and we're waiting for a third officer. I think he just walked in. Brandon. And Officer Brandon Willard. These officers were involved on March 23rd this year at approximately 21:30 hours for those who use police officers. That's 9:30 p.m. Dispatch received a call of 911 from a female on West Saratoga, reported that she had been robbed and sexually assaulted. She provided a description of the suspect and the suspect vehicle, which was immediately broadcast to officers. Within seconds, the responding officers had located the suspect vehicle, and others had arrived at the victim's location. Working as a team, Officer Cleveland and Officer Cousdale located and stopped the suspect vehicle and took the vehicle into custody, the suspect into custody without incident. Simultaneously, Officer Willie and Officer Bergnoli located and interviewed the victim, eliciting important information that tied the suspect to the victim and to the crime scene. Careful examination of the suspect vehicle resulted in the location of the fruits of the larceny, as described by the victim. A thorough search of the suspect also resulted in the location of evidence which linked him to the events of the sexual assault, as described by the victim as well. Officer Bergnoli took extraordinary care in accompanying the victim to the START program for his forensic medical exam. Careful and thoughtful effort was executed by all the officers during this investigation that resulted in the predatory, habitual criminal being arrested for serious felonies. These are unit commendations for each of these officers.
Congratulations. Congratulations, officers. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. We're scheduled to have a presentation by our DDA, but I don't see anyone here representing them, so maybe they're not here this evening. They're too busy celebrating the wonderful event that they had last week and hosting the National Main Street program, and so we'll give them a council meeting off, and I'm sure they'll be back next time. Thanks. All right, the next order of business then would be call to audience. Call to audience is your opportunity for those of you who are here to speak for up to 3 minutes on any issue that you would like. Give your name, your address, and the 3 minutes is yours. Good evening.
Suzanne
And that's
Rowe.
movable if you want to, yeah.
All right. I'm representing the Beautification Commission. We're here to let everyone know that our tree planting, Arbor Day Tree City USA planting, it was scheduled for Wednesday, it's tomorrow, at 11 o'clock due to the fact that they couldn't get buses for the kids. We've had to change it to June 4th, 11 o'clock at Oppenheim Park. So I hope everyone can come. Everyone's invited. It's all about the kids, but we also want to put it out there for the seniors if they could make it too. So I hope all of you can come.
Good. All right,
That's
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
June 4th, 11 a.m., Oppenheimer Park.
Right.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening.
So she invited the seniors and looked at all of you. Sherry Wells, 315 West Troy. As part of cleaning up for that Main Street party that our downtown hosted, I was doing the parking lot behind Como's, and Danny's and Woodward Imperial had all the cigarette butts off their area, and I noticed Danny's has its own bike rack there for employees. And those are two things that I hadn't known. If there isn't an ordinance requiring restaurants and such to have cigarette butt receptacles, I suggest that we could use that. When the snow melted, it was mounds of those ugly things. I never want to see another one. Now, the Main Street Conference, and I'm wearing one of the T-shirts they gave us for the Oakland County Main Street, and this. I attended it and was involved in it on my own, but I was getting compliments when I went to the Main Street Conference about that wonderful party we threw in Ferndale Saturday night, and I said, of course, it's typical. And then I was looking at one big sheet of paper. They were having the different downtown people put down what they would like in their downtown, and I tried not to look too smug because we have most of those things that they have on their wish list. I attended the energy and historic workshops that they had there. And one of the things I learned is there's something called a certified local government, and the benefit of that is being able to bring money in, so I'm looking further into that. I wasn't able to attend the two sessions that our DDA did, but I learned last year from Scott Maloney of Treat Dreams, when he was on a panel that Christina had put together for last year's, that that was far from the first time she'd done that kind of thing. And she's never been very good at telling people all the stuff she does do and does know. And I have just been amazingly impressed with the depth of her knowledge, and that she shares that in the Main Street conferences and has everybody thinking Ferndale is just this amazing, wonderful place, which we know.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Paul Kish, 707 West Hazelhurst. On March 24th, 2014, I brought to this council's attention that on March 6th, 2012, the Board of Review was not in compliance with the City of Ferndale Charter. That ordinance being 477, ordinance number 477 states 5 members, city assessor, city attorney, and 3 citizens. Also brought to this council's attention that the city attorney, Dan Christ, was not present at that Board of Review. On April 1st, 2014, April Lynch responded to that accusation, stating, historically, the city attorney has not been requested to attend Board of Review meetings. My understanding from that statement is that numerous times your city attorney, Dan Christ, has not complied with the law. On May 1st, 2014, I reviewed this response from Oakland County Equalization Chief Tracy Jones. She states in that letter, as I examined a copy of the charter, I see that you are correct. The charter calls for 5 members, city assessor, city attorney, and 3 citizens. We will be contacting the city to advise them of this charter requirement and to suggest they change it. Also on May 1st, 2014, I received this letter from Stephen Vella, Senior Associate Counsel, Attorney Grievance Commission in Detroit, Michigan. He states, the issue you raised appears to be a legal one between you and the city government. I don't understand why April Lynch had to give out misinformation, saying historically we don't ask the city attorney when that is the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisch. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council this evening? Good evening, sir.
Mr. Mayor, council members.
Hi.
My name is Greg Carpenter. I live at 13618 Lancaster Drive in Shelby Township. I'm here on behalf of Rizzo Environmental Services. I'm just here to, if you have any questions regarding the amendment to the solid waste plan for Oakland County, I can address them at that time if you have any.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming down from Shelby. Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda, as our regulars know, are those items that council considers routine and we enact in one motion unless something is pulled by council from the consent agenda. So let me read that now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held May 12, 2014. Item B is the approval of the amended franchise agreement acknowledging the legal name change from Comcast of the South, Inc. to Comcast of Colorado, Florida, Michigan, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Washington, LLC. Item C is the approval of the Michigan Department of Transportation contract for asphalt resurfacing, drainage, pavement repairs, concrete, curb, gutter, sidewalk and ramps, pedestrian signals, water main, and pavement markings on East 9 Mile Road from Woodward Avenue to West End Street, as submitted by our Director of Public Works. Item D is the approval of the 2014 Ferndale Dream Cruise vendor project agreement with Ford Motor Company, with first option to negotiate an additional one-year term contract for the 2015 event. Item E is the approval of the 2014 Ferndale Dream Cruise Rockin' Live Entertainment Performance Agreements. Item F is the approval to pay the Michigan Municipal League dues totaling $7,282 for fiscal year 2014 and 15, charged to the City Council memberships and dues account. G is the approval of the program invoices for Captain May and Sergeant Light from Eastern Michigan University's CERNS, Fire Staff, and Command School at $3,000 per student for a total of $6,000 charged to the Training and Education account. Item H, approval to utilize Gabriel, Roeder, Smith & Company to provide actuarial and consulting services for the City of Ferndale Retiree Health Care Plan valuation as of June 30th, 2014, for an amount not to exceed $27,000, charged to those plans, by the way, not the city. Item I is the approval of to purchase and install the server upgrades from Vision Networking Solutions, LLC, for $4,322.38, charged to the computer operations account. Item J is the approval of the requested amendment of the Oakland County Solid Waste Plan for the inclusion of a Type A transfer station and solid waste processing facility to be located at 900 Baldwin Avenue in Pontiac, Michigan. Item K is the approval of a special event permit for the Green Cruise on Saturday, August 9, 2014, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., as detailed in the Special Events Director's summary to reflect the consensus of the Special Events Committee. Item L is the approval of a special event permit for Pig and Whiskey on July 11th, 12th, and 13th of this year, and to be located on East Troy Street, Falvey parking lot, and the south section of the library parking lot, as detailed in the Special Event Summary. And finally, item M is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office, subject to the review by the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Piana and supported by Lennon and Dan Christ.
Mayor, with respect to item 6L, the special event for the Pig and Whiskey event, the requested relief, rather than the south section of the library parking lot, should be broadened to the entire library parking lot, in addition to the two other locations. With that requested amendment, that could remain on consent agenda.
Okay.
So as opposed to south section of library parking lot, it's just the library parking lot.
Correct.
Councilwoman, would you consider that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Councilman Lennon, you okay with that? Are there any other discussions or questions on the consent agenda? Yes,
I'm
Councilman
actually
Paul.
requesting that 6D be removed or pulled from this consent.
Okay.
Given the fact that I'm an employee of Ford Motor Company, I cannot vote on that item, and if it's part of the packet, I can't vote on the whole packet.
So we will move consent agenda item D to the regular agenda.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else? You know, I guess I would just like to ask because we do this occasionally, and I'm not suggesting you don't need to, but Dan, and I don't mean to catch you off guard, but what is the definition by which we need to uphold, to hold ourselves in terms of a conflict of interest? Because I guess my thought is that it has to somehow personally enrich you, not just the company you work for. But I'm curious what...
express conflict of interest or an implied conflict of interest. And as it relates to an implied conflict of interest, all you, Mayor, and as well as all the council members, should be cognizant that you want to avoid the appearance of a conflict. Certainly, I think in this instance, there's not really an express conflict of interest, but just to avoid any question with respect to that, the councilman's decision to recuse himself, I think, is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And I wasn't disagreeing, by the way. I'd never heard that articulated, but there's sort of an implied and an expressed conflict.
And to avoid the appearance of a conflict.
And avoid the appearance of either. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to add some context to that discussion, it's not just our actions here, but as employees of the company, the employers have a conflict of interest policy by which we should abide by, which may sometimes, and I know I've removed myself from a vote because of that.
Yes, you have.
As well. So it's not just on this side, it's the day job rules and then, the other ones as well.
Great. No, I appreciate the explanation. I wasn't disagreeing, Councilman, with Pollica, with your decision. But okay, anything else on the consent agenda? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Pollica?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda minus item D is approved. Moving on to the regular agenda, and let's just do D now, since I think it's fairly standard, and we know why you're excusing yourself. But item D, formal item D, and now we'll make this the first item on the regular agenda, is the approval of the 2014 Ferndale Dream Cruise vendor project agreement with Ford Motor Company, with first option to negotiate an additional one-year term contract for the 2015 event.
I move that we authorize the attached 2014 Ferndale Dream Cruise vendor project agreement between the City of Ferndale and Ford Motor Company with first option to negotiate an additional one-year term contract for the 2015 event.
Support. Let's go with him.
It was moved by Martin and supported by Lennon. Michael, is there anything you want to say about this, especially is there a possibility of a second year, or do you want to just get up and thank for it, or anything you want to say about this item?
No, I think that they've been a great partner with us. They've been very cooperative, and they brought a new vibe to downtown Ferndale during the Woodward Dream Cruise, whereas there was at a point where we were losing that audience. And through their financial support, it's helping us make it a huge spotlight during that period of time during the third weekend in August. So we are very grateful for their support.
Thanks. Good. All right, so it's been moved and supported. Any other discussion? Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Now moving on to regular agenda item A, consideration of the Ferndale Moves website as the city's official complete streets and non-motorized network plan. And Derek Delacourt, our Director of Community and Economic Development, is here to introduce that item.
Yes, and we're very happy to be here. I'm not going to take too much time. With me is Norm Cox from the Greenway Collaborative, who worked with the city and our advisory committee over the last several months to put together a plan that represents the kind of the final piece of the city's complete streets ordinance. When the council adopted the ordinance several years ago, the ordinance identified the need to create and adopt a complete streets or non-motorized network plan, which to this point has not been adopted. So we took upon ourselves to, and met with council at the beginning of this project, to start that process, and at the same time take a look at the City of Ferndale's overall transportation network as it relates to all modes of transportation, their connectivity, and the equitability of the transportation system as a whole within the City of Ferndale. We believe there's going to be significant changes moving forward with the transportation network over the next few years. Hopefully we're going to see transit. Surrounding communities have adopted and taken on a more complete streets philosophy. It's proven to be an economic development tool over the last several years in other communities. And it's something certainly when I got here, was the understanding that this is how the city of Ferndale wants to do business in relation to its transportation system. So we took that attitude in looking at the plan and tried to develop something that was uniquely Ferndale and certainly representative of the entire community and the desires of this council and the elected officials we've dealt with in the past. So the plan is here. It's been reviewed and vetted by an advisory committee made up of different stakeholders within the system, both elected officials, representatives of the senior community, the DDA, bicycling groups, pedestrian groups, handicap groups. It's been looked at, it's been presented to the Planning Commission, in which the Planning Commission, by ordinance, adopted the plan and recommends that council do the same. And we're here to present that plan tonight. We do have quite a few slides. We wanted to make sure we had all the information available for council. We're going to move through them rather quickly, or I'm going to ask Norm to move through them rather quickly. But at any time, please stop us if you want us to expand or expound on it. It's a rather voluminous plan at this point. And I think everybody's aware at this point it evolved from a standard planning process into one where we've used a website as the plan document itself, and feel that that's been a very successful process. So,
can I ask you a question
yes.
on just what you said so far? Because I wasn't on council when the Complete Streets Ordinance was adopted. But so that ordinance required the city to adopt the plan, but didn't adopt the plan. It just
Correct.
sort of put out that we want to adopt the plan.
Yes, most ordinances need to have a follow-up with a plan, so you know what you're actually going to do to complete your streets over time. And so this is that plan. I'm fairly excited by this, as you can imagine.
Yeah. And it's pretty standard practice in this day and age as a component, much like a city's parks and recreation plan. The transportation network is a big component of the city's master land use planning process. And having a comprehensive transportation plan to base those land use decisions on is pretty standard practice at this point. The city, just like its future land use, like its parks and everything else, should have a future or a vision of what it wants its transportation system to be. It gives the directives to staff, our engineers, as to how we want to go about implementing the system throughout the city. Not every city looks at transportation the same way. So this provides a unifying document. It also provides the residents an understanding of what the intent of the community is as it relates to streets, roads, from their neighborhood streets to the major streets, which has an impact on property values, where you choose to live, how many cars you own, all of those things that go into residents' decisions. These plans have a significant impact to. So,
if I may, I think it's a more appropriate question for you than our speaker, but I just would like to clarify for everyone, myself included, what this is. This is essentially, as you said, a planning document.
Correct.
It does not commit us to some specific activity or action. So say, for example, I love the bike lanes, but say I don't like, say the roundabouts. Am I committing to a roundabout project in the future by voting for this?
No, we are recommending as part of the plan, and then the Planning Commission agreed that to consider those as potentially the preferred alternative. It does not obligate you to include those in the design, to fund, to have those be a part of the final project. We understand that. There are numerous recommendations in this plan, some of which we feel will be adopted and accepted without thought or without concern, and others, like any other master land use plan, that when it comes down to it will need additional vetting. We don't want to soft play the importance of this plan. It is a vision. It is something that not only allows internally the city, but it lets MDOT, it lets other road agency know, and it's important to the Complete Streets process at a state level that the city has a plan in place for when they come through to resurface roads like 8 Mile and Woodward, that the city has adopted a vision for its roads, that it is unified. But, yeah, certainly you're not obligated
And my
to
question
those.
in no way is meant to undercut the importance of this document and for future activities and planning and everything else. But I want to be very clear as we put this out here. That doesn't mean
you're not
committing to something necessarily. But it's important to set a vision, right? Developers need to know, residents need to know, we need to know.
Yeah, and correct. And we think it's important that council knows from a staff standpoint, from an advisory committee standpoint, from the Planning Commission, what those preferred alternatives are.
Sure.
It does not mean council as the elected body has to agree and or fund them at some point or agree to the final design of the road. But we think it's important to let you know what our recommendations are at this point up front, not have it come back when each road project shows up.
Sure.
So,
thank you.
With that, I think
So I guess on that point, not to belittle it, but if there was something that council, and there's a lot of things in this plan,
Yeah.
so if there was something in there that council wasn't comfortable with, would this be the appropriate time to to say it and remove it, or would it just be, well, we can wait until that project comes down the pipeline and we can talk more about it then?
Well, that's either answer is acceptable. We would recommend that you adopt the plan with the improvements as recommended, and give us the opportunity to show you when those individual projects come forward why they are our preferred alternatives. At that point, we'll have more detailed engineering. We'll have a better idea of road funding. We'll have more information to give you at this point. If any of the improvements in here absolutely fly 100% in the face of what council even wants to consider, then we would suggest maybe you recommend them. I don't think we've done that here. I think we've been pretty measured in our approach, and don't feel like now is the appropriate time to take those out, unless it's a topic that you absolutely don't ever want to see considered or us bring information forward on in the future. That would be the circumstances I would recommend taking them out.
Thank you.
All right, with that, like I said, we have a few slides. Please speed us up, slow us down, depending on what you wanted to do. We wanted to make sure we covered the whole plan. So,
well, you've spent a long time on this, and we want to give you ample opportunity to explain it, so thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. With that, I'll turn it over for Norm, and I think you've worked with this.
And good evening, Norm. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, council members. It's a pleasure to be back here again. And I'd like to say at the outset that the city staff, the steering committee, the planning commission, city council, all the public, this has been the most enjoyable project that we have ever worked on. It's been a great group of people to work with. We love Ferndale. On behalf of Carolyn, who's with the Greenway Collaborative, she's also had a great time. Fortunately, she's in Europe, and so poor thing. Can't make the presentation.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate to hear it.
Oh, it's great to be. As Derek said, this is, it's a different plan. We want to keep this something accessible to anyone, that anyone could delve into all the details that they wanted to. If it's the engineer who is going to be taking this the next step, that they could look things up easily. We also kind of want to make this a living document where there'll be the part that you adopt tonight of the website, or we'll hope you will adopt tonight, and then there's the other part that will continue to provide input to the city and promotion of this type of work. So this is the first official website plan we've done, but I think this is really the wave of the future. We won't go back and do another PDF report. We think this is the way to go about it. And you also have a great starting point to come to a community and ride your bike lanes. Usually we're the ones kind of initially trying to get these in. You have done so much, 9 Mile, Livernois, the things that are happening, the community, its structure of your mixed uses, the nice downtown, the close-in neighborhoods. You have, where you are right now, most communities would hope to end up at the end of the planning process. So you have a great community to work with, and we really see that this could really take off and become a very much the model community of how to do complete streets. I think you'll see great success, and you already are. One of the things we talk about is there's also a cost of not doing anything. Sometimes we focus so much on what is the cost of building this. But if we did an analysis looking at the Office of Highway Safety Planning's crashes from 2008 to 2012, and we found that bike and pedestrian crashes were nearly 5% of all your crashes, but the 2 pedestrian crashes represented 100% of all your fatal crashes. They are also about 44% of all your most serious incapacitating injury crashes. Now, when we look at things as it's kind of a crass thing, a cost-benefit analysis, you look at the cost of the community, insurance, lost wages, etc., but also as a way of looking at what people will pay to avoid that crash. And the National Safety Council has come up with what they call a comprehensive cost of crashes. If we ran that 5-year period through it, that came out to $2.9 million for those pedestrian bicycle crashes. So that works out to be about $144 per person per year. So there is a cost of not doing something. The planning process, I think Derek talked about it. We've been doing it, started in July last year. Monthly steering committee meetings. We had a web survey with 250 some responses. We try to do a lot digital with this plan because you were inundated with like the Woodward Complete Streets and the transit and so many workshops. We tried to provide other ways to have people provide input. We had visioning web input maps. We put every iteration up on the map where people could provide comments. We put together the first draft plan in February. It had 3 different components, and then put together kind of iterations since then with executive summaries and a final draft input in March. So in April, we were in front of the Planning Commission. So it's been a fairly involved process trying to get input from a lot of different folks. The draft plan itself includes 3 main elements. It's the policies and programs. These are the things that the community is going to do to really encourage people to use the facilities and walk and bike more for all the benefits it brings to the community. Then there's the part that you probably most think of this plan, the network plan. That's the part that says do this here and this over here. And then there's the implementation plan of how are you going to go from this big plan of all these different streets, how are we going to systematically go through it and take care of the most important things first. The policies and programs, really they work in concert with the physical improvements to encourage people to walk. They really trying to integrate what they're doing, the bicycling, walking into everyday life. We want to make this not something that, I should say, something that is more of just a natural choice, that people want to walk and bike more. They feel like this is something that's a supportive place to do it.
Before you move on, I'm sorry, the last bullet talks about to influence how success is measured. Does it define how the success is measured?
Yes, we do look at some different things. We'll talk about those in just a moment here. Thank you. I'm not going to go through every different thing here, but we do have Safe Routes to School programs, a number of different items that will promote walking and bicycling to school. From a variety of different things. This is really kind of outside of the purview of the city, so these are more kind of recommendations, but the school has been involved on our steering committee throughout the process. Things like a walking and bicycling map, using this as a tool to get information out to the community. We make a really cool map. We can maybe slide in a little educational material that people might reference. Getting bicycle parking integrated into the businesses as they redevelop, provide some different models to kind of how this could be pulled into the businesses. Key things of annual bicycle and pedestrian counts. This is really critical for us to kind of measure. So 5 years from now, some of you are being in front of the councils can say, well, has this been a worthwhile investment? And having the numbers from before and how things have progressed and be able to measure those against crashes will be really important. There's some great national models and programs to participate in. And then, as I said, comparing these to crashes, kind of look at these on a yearly basis. Are we creating some unintended consequences with the new facilities? Are we dropping the crash rate overall? Just kind of keeping track of success. Building up your design guidelines and how you just go about your daily business. Getting involved in some professional groups that have great resources and training for staff. Educational campaigns, little things where instead of a ticket that officers could provide, maybe a kind of an informational piece of, okay, I'm not going to give you a ticket this time, but this is why I pulled you over. Kind of help getting people through things like that. Positive reinforcement for things like helmets, various different things. Looking at downtown parking, a lot of different ways, a little bit of a travel demand management aspect, but if we're going to encourage people to walk and bicycle, how are we pricing our parking? Are we finding alternatives for people to get home? Say, if are we encouraging bus use? Is there a way for someone to get an emergency ride home if their bike breaks? A variety of different elements there. And throughout, permeating all this was this idea of placemaking. It's a buzz term that I'm sure you hear about every single meeting. But looking at, as we do this, how can we do it in such a way that we're not just solving a problem, but we're doing it gracefully in something that adds a whole nother element. We looked at a lot of different elements and how to integrate community art into a lot of these different programs. The network plan itself, these are the physical changes. I like to think we were kind of pragmatic visionaries. We try to look at this from what we could do so much in your existing curb lines at a very affordable cost. We put everything up in Google Maps so everyone could zoom in, look at things with air photos, street view, click on lines to get information. Again, trying to make it accessible and links to different information. It's a lot of detail. We're not going to take you through every single button, but every single button is a recommendation up there. For the bicycle facilities, you of course have the conventional bike lanes. We're looking at kind of expanding those. Also look at buffered bike lanes, where sometimes we're finding space between the moving traffic and sometimes space between the parked cars, depending where more of the conflict is, sometimes a little bit of both. Cycle tracks, this has already been discussed with Woodward. We're also looking at following that pattern onto 8 Mile Road, where the traffic is such that the bicyclists need that much more buffer. Also the shared lane markings, expanding like what you already have in the downtown. And I think one of the key elements of this is this idea of a neighborhood connector. We tried to develop a facility that works not for the Lycra crowd, if you will. We want this to work for the 60% of the population that will bike if a facility is comfortable. And the idea of going on your local roadways, can we make this work for anyone to navigate around the city comfortably and get to the key destinations through traffic calming and wayfinding. Again, we won't go through all this, but the red lines are your Woodward and 8 Mile with the most buffered types of facilities on your busiest roads. Then we get into the buffered bike lanes in the orange and the conventional bike lanes in the yellow. And then you see in the blue those neighborhood connectors. So you can see we have quite a dense route that really should be able to get you to all the key locations around town comfortably. A key element for pedestrians is getting across the road safely and having convenient ways to get across the road where you're not having to walk great distances to a signal. One of the things we have a lot of are crossing islands. They are proven safety and countermeasures that Federal Highway Administration promotes. It provides pedestrians to get across the road safely in 2 segments. It's pretty much a, hey, look here, pedestrians are crossing. Using more of the beacons like you just installed down on 9 Mile. And then some pedestrian hybrid beacons in some key areas along Woodward and 8 Mile. It's hard to put in a pedestrian signal in these days like you have on 9 Mile. You probably couldn't get away with that these days. And this is a solution to bring cars to a complete stop and get pedestrians across a busy road like that safely. Simple things like you've been doing already, but expanding the curb extensions, looking at some things like raised crosswalks for these really tough areas as the side streets intersect Woodward, where visibility is really hard. You have vehicles turning quickly off the roadways, ways to kind of really raise, literally, the pedestrian profile in these areas. And again, high visibility crosswalks. Roundabouts came up as a discussion here, whether you like them or not. So one of the things we look at are we call neighborhood traffic circles that aren't really roundabouts. Everyone gets asked, I'm sure you get constant requests to put a stop sign on my street. People are speeding. Well, these things...
Street bumps.
Street bumps.
Speed bumps.
These are simple ways that could replace your stopways. It just slows and steadies your traffic here and breaks up the visual straight line that makes people want to speed. It's a very simple thing you just kind of drop in there. We are looked at a few single-lane roundabouts on Pinecrest, Hilton, Woodward. These are the 1 lane going in and 1 lane out. These are great safety measures. Again, they also break up the visual preference, the visual straight line area, and help pedestrians get across the road. We're not looking at any of the multi-lane roundabouts or anything big and hairy in the report. But those are some of the ones we've looked at. All these different dots are the road crossing improvements of the various different types. So when completed, it's going to be much more convenient and safe to get across these roadways, and it'll seem a lot less intimidating. We also have a lot of spot improvements. There are areas where we have designated turn lanes that you don't need it. Dropping in a landscaped island is actually cheaper in the long run than maintaining pavement and clearing off pavement. It also helps kind of slow down traffic. Gateway treatments to kind of make things feel a little bit tighter at intersections. Tree extensions, again, trying to break up areas, on local roadways. Other elements like short center islands on some of the local roadways. You already have a few of these kind of partial road closures. And then things that we're using a lot of these neighborhood connectors, you have on-street parking on one side of the road for a lot of these roadways, but you have a very straight way. If you flip the parking from one side to another, alternating, it's a kind of a gentle way of slowing down the traffic and breaking up that kind of, that road. It looks like you fire a cannon down. It's a subtle way of getting people to naturally drive the speed you want them to drive. And that's something that goes through all this is we try to design a road that operates naturally the way you want it to operate. So cars are naturally driving the speed that you want, not so much relying on posted speed and enforcement. So these are kind of some locations of the various spot improvements.
Go back to the last one. I just want to add at this point, too, I know most of council has looked at the website as well, but we keep showing these maps that have the spot improvements. I think it's important to point out if you actually go out and use the website, if you click on any one of these locations, it tells you specifically what is being proposed at that location. I think it's important for residents to know. They can go out and use this and look. It takes you to what the proposed improvements are, which are, you're seeing those cross sections on the alternating slides. And then it also allows you to link to the actual standard, whether it's AASHTO or NACTO, that's an adopted highway or road standard that allows these designs to be inserted or incorporated into the road. These aren't just, we hope to put these in somewhere and we'll figure it out later. The plan's actually gone to some length to figure out what improvements are important in what places. So as we go through and do road design, we have specific recommendations, locations, and the residents can go out and see what's being proposed on their streets and in their neighborhoods. So we'd encourage everybody still, as we have been, to go out and take a look and click on some of these to see what's actually being proposed.
Yeah, that's, I think, part of the reason why we wouldn't go back and do plans the other way. The wealth of information that you could tap into and link into the other resources. Or just zoom in on your street, turn on all the different layers and see what's proposed. Thanks. Stuff I kind of take for granted. We've been doing it for a while.
Council knows, but I want to make sure residents know as well.
Other thing is we kind of talk about the idea of these mini multimodal hubs. The idea of creating around town orientation centers, there's been a lot of discussion about bike share, but can we combine the idea of a bike share with car share, like a zip car, information kiosks that might have bicycle repair elements built in, and locate these near bus stops in a lot of your kind of growing new commercial areas that you're trying to build up, where you have lots of different options to get around town and show people the different alternatives. So this would be something that we kind of could see. We mapped out, we see some of the key locations here, but for the bike share would have many more different spot locations. That's a whole nother element to locate all the different bike shares. Various transit enhancements, trying to make it much
Wait,
more...
can we, I'm sorry,
Yes.
back to the bike shares. How do you know that whether you have the volume to make them work? Do you think we do? I mean, how is that measured? How would you decide those kinds of questions?
It's a very good question. There are some reports that have just come out literally in the past 4 or so months, I think, when I sent some stuff over, that looked at all the various bike share programs around and have some great baseline of, if you want to succeed, this is the number of bikes you need for this type of population and density and spacing and all the various things. To make it work, to make it profitable or self-sustaining is something that the jury, I would say, is still out there so new. And it's hard to take something, if you look at the city bike in New York City, it's all ad revenue and supported by Citibank. And most of these places, that is how they make their break even. But again, these are so new, it's hard to say how this will go. And that's, again, a kind of needs another level of detail to look at to see what would be the cost implications. Can you get sponsorship?
I just wanted to add, this is one of the things we've been talking about, and we have the same question, but we wanted to include it in the plan as an identifier for something that we're going to investigate going forward.
Mm-hmm.
We have started conversations with Royal Oak, Berkeley, Clawson, Midtown has a bike share program, about jointly looking into this. It's something when we're out, and we've talked about the 360 project and attracting the creative jobs and young tech jobs. This is something, whether the city makes any money on it or not, attracts those type of companies and attracts those type of users and residents to the city. These are the types of things they look for when making a decision on how and where to locate. Certainly, we don't want to get anything that's a money suck for the city, but we think it's important to consider them, and especially if we can partner with other cities and have a plan.
And that's where I was going, because I can't imagine anyone renting a bike from the east side to the west side of Ferndale, but the largest employer in town is Beaumont Hospital, so I could imagine somebody renting a bike to go to work at Beaumont, or other destinations where it would make sense.
We talked with some of the local companies, Allied, if their employees would be interested in a bike share location, they drive into work, place one in the industrial area, a central hub, and then they can drive down to the downtown after work and may not necessarily want to take the bike back to work. They may go home, take a bus home, do something else, and have that ability. So it's something we're looking into, but the jury's still out whether it's feasible or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there are countless different systems, the smart bike, dumb rack, smart rack, dumb bike. There's another 3-hour presentation here. But I think Derek brought up the key points is you want to do it in coordination with what's happening in the surrounding communities to get the maximum benefit out of this. And I have to say, I was a skeptic myself when these were first proposed. I mean, and this is, of course, what we do. I have been surprised just how popular they have been and the degree of use they have gotten. So keep an open mind, and we'll take a look at this as it comes down the pike. We talked about a little bit of transit, trying to up it. We've done a little relocating of some transit stops to work better with these mid-block crossing improvements we talked about, because when someone gets off the bus, they're going to cross right there. Let's make it safe and convenient. For all these things...
I'm sorry, at what point, though, do we integrate, because I know both are in different stages of existence and maturity, but I think I see stuff like this and I always wonder, okay, but yeah, ideally rapid transit's coming through Woodward, and I don't see that reflected here. Do you know what I mean? At what point do we integrate those plans from a future planning perspective? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yes. Yeah. What would happen when the light rail or bus rapid transit comes up Woodward?
Well, I think it may not talk much about the actual BRT mode, but this whole plan and the system we're designing is based on the improvements that are recommended not only in the BRT AA, but also the Woodward Avenue Complete Streets program. They're all consistent. We don't reference the three often because each plan deals with a different component of the system separately. It's certainly very consistent with the Woodward Avenue alternatives and recommendations. In fact, they're identical. And then we have proposed the improvements in the crossings to be consistent with what we think the mode and the alignment of the BRT is going forward. So we have done as much as we can now without having an approved BRT system to make sure that they are consistent.
All right, thank you.
And we do reference, and if you click on those things for Woodward, you do see the reference to the Woodward plan, the complete streets. So we do try to reference those two different plans. And we actually modeled what we proposed for 8 Mile on the Woodward, figuring that is the Department of Transportation's looking at that type of corridor that would apply to there as well. We did add a few extra things that you could do in the near term while that happens, because it might be a year or two before that gets implemented.
Would bus station enhancements be something that a cost that the city would look to somehow try to cover? Is that something that you work with the,
I think it depends on the situation. There's a very basic, probably, bus station that's either going to be associated with the BRT route if it comes, or obviously SMART has a standard practice they use. We may work with them to find out if we wanted to do additional as part of a road project, move a transit stop, that there may be costs associated with those. Obviously, the first option is always pursue grant funding. But, yeah, to build out the ultimate station, there may be a point where SMART or any other transit provider says, this is our standard, this is as much as we provide. If you want more, you have to consider it yourself. So that is possible.
A while back, Derek was talking about clicking on the buttons and pulling things up. And for the road cross sections, we have quite detailed recommendations of how many feet should go to different things. And in part of the public input, we allowed people to kind of click on this and redesign their own cross sections. So we tried to make these realistic. It's not just oh, we think you should do something here. It's, we know this will fit here type recommendation. The implementation plan, again, prioritizes the projects. We tried to coordinate a lot with capital improvement projects, the road resurfacing and reconstruction projects. So much is happening already. Grant applications are being submitted as things are being evolved here. So things are happening really quickly. So we're integrating things. 9 Mile, Pinecrest, and Hilton. We integrated was already kind of happening with Livernois and 9 Mile, kind of building on those. We will, I would say in these first batch of the capital improvement projects, you're going to see significant safety and mobility improvements. We're quite excited to see what's going to happen in East 9 Mile. I think that will change the entrance to downtown dramatically and really make a completely new gateway to your downtown. And when we do it as a part of a road reconstruction project, of course, it's much cheaper. That is the most efficient way to do things. We also looked at kind of a first priority project, a set of kind of core network, get the backbone of the system where it's easy to get from here to there, where you don't have the bike lane to nowhere, where you have a system. Looking at providing safe road crossings at the major roadways. Really kind of very modest changes. The second really kind of flushes out the system, looking at very cost-effective projects. Again, this is within the existing right-of-way. Sometimes they're dependent on a project that's coming down the way or other phases being completed. That's why it's the second priority. And then there's, we call it kind of the resurface reconstruction. Really most appropriate to hold on these to the next time you resurface that roadway to make it a more cost-effective implementation. And then the long-term projects, basically Woodward and 8 Mile, that is something that is something done with the state. It's a very costly type project. So this is like the living document already, the public input. You could start putting maintenance requests. If you have a bicycle parking request, something missing from the plan that even after all this we should put up there. If you have some way you can, right now you just go to the map and we've enhanced this over the process. Go there, click on it, and put in your comments. And so this is, again...
Can people still do that?
People could still do that.
That's an ongoing...
And this is yours for a very nominal, I think a couple $100 a year to maintain the server.
Right.
You could use this for whatever. Derek, I think we talked about maybe using it for some other planning projects.
Yeah, we'd like to. We're waiting to see to get through tonight, and then we've started to partner with Artemis, who's our web site provider, on the permanent hosting of it. But our hope is, and I think you guys have heard me say this before, is not only for future wishes and things like that, but when we have projects like East 9 Mile going on, that we can use that community remarks tool for ongoing feedback. We can put the plans on this site and allow people to make comments as the construction's underway. We're still looking at exactly how to do it, but we hope things in this tool will work for that function as well.
I'm going to interject an answer to a question that was asked at Planning Commission about how did our online input compare to a traditional workshop. And I think one of the things that we found was we didn't get that many more comments than if we did our traditional evening 2-hour workshops. We've got very well thought out comments where people had time to look at things, think about it, mark it, and of course we also have the ability for other people to look at things and comment and vote on things. So from a qualitative standpoint, maybe not necessarily from a quantitative standpoint, it's been a success.
I'd like to, it was interesting. We didn't start off to do this. I mean, it's been an evolving process or a work in progress. We would have been very curious to see how much more we could have used this tool if we would have started off the plan with this intent. We started and partnered to what was most likely a very traditional plan. Then we had the idea of putting up a website just to get one-directional feedback or output from us to folks about what the plan is and how it's going to work. And then we just kept changing it and evolving it. So in the future, we're very happy with the outcome of it, but we also know that if we were to do this again and start off at this point and put the time and effort into the PR and the publicizing the tool, we think it's going to do nothing but grow. We started off the first time with a transportation plan and got more input than I had hoped and seen at a lot of charrettes, and it wasn't necessarily from the choir. No offense. I mean, a lot of times we do charrettes and planning, and Councilwoman Piana is very familiar with, and it's the same 30 or 35 people who show up. This, we were able to reach out to the school districts. We were able to put notices and flyers that went out to parents of kids in the school and let them know that they didn't have to come somewhere. They could sit down at home and review the network and make comment on it. We'd like to refine that process and find a better way to use it, but even though the number of comments wasn't necessarily that much higher, we think that the breadth and the type of comments was much different than what we normally would have gotten.
So, thank you.
So with that, are there questions of council that you haven't already asked, of course?
I have many, but I also wanted to sort of start going back to the big picture of what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. And I said I was fairly excited that we're here. I mean, it took 4 years from the adoption of the Complete Streets Ordinance to getting a plan. And I remember when Derek was first hired and we didn't have a CIP, a capital improvements plan yet. And he goes, do you want it quick or do you want it right? And I go, I want it right. And take your time to do it. And I think that that philosophy has always come out of his department, and he's been a leader in that and making sure that we do it right. And so I feel like they innovated and they explored about how to take something that was traditional and to put it into something very unique. And you obviously see it as a model going forward for your consulting business, which I think is fantastic. But at the end of the day, for the last 10 years, Ferndale has been looking about how do we make the city more accessible for everyone. And this is just an ongoing drive and push to make that happen. And we, as council, have been very strategic in how we are planning to use our more scarce dollars strategically. And I think this is just an ongoing example of how we're bringing all these pieces together. And so, and of course, giving more choices to get around Ferndale and the region are really important. So to me, this is all about connecting to the broader regional transportation system. And so I just wanted to start from the macro, and then of course I cannot not use this quote. I love it when a plan comes together from the A-team, but I think this is a great plan. And so my questions for you, because I've been involved in this process since the get-go, you guys needed your time to answer your questions tonight, is specific to what is your recommendation for the low-hanging fruit of policy and programs. So you gave a recommendation for priority projects, which are looking at redoing infrastructure on the streets, which is fantastic, right? But what do you think from a policy perspective we should start working on over the next 6 months to a year?
I would say I'd have to go through each of the different things a little bit, but one of the ones that jump out is just getting involved in the counting right away. It's actually, I think other communities have found that they could bring in volunteers to help doing the counting, and that actually helps move things forward. I think some things like investigating.
Can you explain that a little bit?
The counting?
Sorry, counting of bicycle and pedestrians.
Oh.
There's something called the National Pedestrian Bicycle Documentation Project, and they have set dates throughout the year. I believe there was 2, and now there's a 3rd. They have training programs online. They have forums. It's a way to kind of start to see where you are, because it's a shame every time you build something with bike lanes, not knowing what was happening before to see if that was actually a success. I think that's key. So that would be, I say, one of the first things to make sure, jumping in and taking care of that. Let's see. You're putting me on the spot a little bit here.
Some of them, I'm looking at your educational campaign, like traffic violation warning sheet, bicycle safety class in lieu of fine. It's very interesting to me. Helmet reward campaign, educational street banners. I mean, these are all great options, and I'm just looking for.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are pretty easy. to do. As far as the educational tickets, there's models out there that are being done right now in other communities that you could basically get a copy of, slap Ferndale's logo on, cover it at a shift change, with the officers. It's something we want to do. The same with like rewarding kids for wearing a helmet. It's a simple thing to put in, gain some coupons from some local businesses that the officers, again, kind of providing a positive interaction with kids bicycling and seeing good things and rewarding behavior. So I think those are a couple easy things from kind of the education enforcement element to get out there. Your banners with the DDA, you're building your brand as a community, and you could also do some encouragement with some banners. Those are, again, a lot of these are pretty simple to implement type things.
Right.
Walking and bicycling, the walking school bus and the bike train are incredibly simple to get going and very effective safe routes to school programs.
Right.
I think, you touched on one of the ones I'd like to mention is, it's been a good experience working with both the school administration and the school board as part of this process. They were both very engaged in this plan. Safe Routes to Schools is mostly a school district or a school-type funding mechanism. But in partnership with them, almost everything we did and recommended as part of this plan impacts transportation or moving from one place to another, and specifically to schools. We considered all of those connectors. And we didn't limit the plan to the City of Ferndale boundaries alone. We used the school district boundaries, so it makes recommendations on improvement in Royal Oak Township. I think we need to reach out to Royal Oak Township. We already have meetings scheduled with Hazel Park to talk about implementing some of these improvements in a broader area than just the city. And the other overarching policy, the education, and Councilman Martin has talked about metrics, and to really have an impact or really see what an impact the plan has, you have to have a baseline. We would need to go out and either in cooperation with volunteers and take some initial counts. We've been, and Lloyd knows this, we've been counting cars for years, and it drives transportation decisions. Nobody counts pedestrians, nobody counts bicyclists, and the idea is behind it, well, nobody uses the system. Well, nobody's ever designed a system to be equitable for all the users. So we'd like to get out and have a policy of taking counts and updating them every year. It's more work. I say that, and I'm sitting here cringing at the same time, but because we all know how much I love metrics. But I think it's important to do that. And then the other one is there's always been a philosophy that these type of improvements are seen as afterthoughts, that you're throwing on bike lanes or you're cramming in crosswalks or pedestrians into a system after you've addressed the car, after you've paid for the roadways, after you've worried about all those things. We believe Ferndale has a culture, and ultimately the policy and directive of staff has been, this is our starting point. This is how we want to see our roads designed from the beginning. Obviously, you can't have everything. We all want the perfect design, and we'll deal with funding issues when we get there. But that the policy of the city is that these are not afterthoughts. These aren't just luxuries of the transportation system to address bicycles and pedestrians appropriately, that it should be the policy of the city that these are incorporated from the beginning. Now, if we can't do it, that's great, but it's not something we just tack on the end if we happen to have a few extra bucks to do a road. So we're hoping that this sets that tone in the city and that we move forward, with that policy in mind.
I just wanted to express my two favorite is paint the pavement program, which is easy to do, and the neighborhood traffic calming program, because I have received so many complaints from residents over the years on council that our emergency routes particularly have really fast traffic, and they would like to slow the traffic down. So I think this could be a great model for our community and testing that out.
Does alternating the sides of the street pose a problem to the fire department?
Nothing we recommend in here are we going to do without, and we've talked to Chief Collins and Chief Sullivan about this, is anything we intend to do without their support. We think it fits within the regulations of keeping 15 or 20 foot clear for posted fire lanes. If they have an issue with how far those offsetting or sawtooth parking places are, we'll work with them. And if it doesn't work for them, then we're not going to bring it forward unless we can put everybody on the same page. But we understand the rules for fire lanes and 20-foot clear and how to do that. We think it'll fit within that, but we're certainly going to spend some time talking with them before we implement anything.
Right. And then I have a couple more things. I wanted to sort of expand on the thank you for the school district. I mean, schools traditionally in the state of Michigan have not had to follow the master plan of any community. They can do whatever they want of expansion and building where they want without actually coordinating with the city. And a couple years ago, the school board was looking at buying our Hayes-Lemmers property and relocating a school, and it was clear to me that we needed to try something new in terms of working with the school district on community planning efforts. And when I reached out to Kevin Deegan-Krause and Jim O'Donnell about exploring doing safe routes to school as something for the school district, they were on board. And Kevin Deegan-Krause has been the representative, as well as the school board appointed a administration staff person to make sure that the school's interests were included with this. So I see this as a resounding success that the city reached out to the school district and really tried to do something different from a community planning perspective. So I think this is strengthening our collaborations with them and our partnership. So I applaud all of us, yay, on this effort, and look forward to implementing some elements of the Safe Routes to School program in partnership with them, because they're the lead on it, not us, but we will be their partner. So we're going to flip the roles. And then my final question is, how will the city make sure that this digital plan does become digital dusty? So does it mean just because it's paper is going to, remain dusty? How are we going to keep this updated other than residents posting comments to it?
We've discussed that internally ourselves. We have the same problem with paper plans and always have. They land on a shelf and disappear, and we actually did some numbers on how many of the master plan and other things have been drawn, or pulled out of the city on paper copies. I can't give you a complete answer because no one's ever done this before.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, but we intend to use all the best practices that keep a website up to date and functional. That's part of the reasons we partnered with Artemis, and truthfully, without a supportive city manager's office and having the staff here now that takes this type of thing seriously, I don't think we could be here. We plan on to continue to use it for construction projects, is our intent, and hopefully we're embarking very shortly here on the city's master land use plan process, and are in pretty serious discussions with the Planning Commission about using this exact process for the master land use plan as well, which ultimately may turn this from a transportation only site to a planning site that's an ongoing planning tool for all of our planning projects, whether it be the transportation plan, the Parks and Rec plan. We're still looking at how to do that, but our hopes is keeping it relevant by continuing to use it and engaging the residents on a consistent basis with this site for all of our planning projects, hopefully.
If I may, just to piggyback off that, one way to do that, I think it's a great site. I certainly hope it doesn't get dusty, as it were. But, as we should track our progress through this. Sorry, metrics, but whatever. Not only that, but when you talk about a communication plan, when we work through the East 9 Mile, for example, project, the more traffic the site gets, the more people are going to understand the vision and things for the future. So to use it for even construction updates and as part of our communication plans to manage the change management of that work, you're going to force even more, instead of having them go somewhere else, you're going to force that traffic through, and then they'll wander while they're there. They'll get used to Ferndale Moves as a useful tool. And, we potentially could broaden that site there, I think.
It's certainly our hope. That's exactly what our intent is and our hope.
If I may throw in, we've actually tried to start doing that with the construction plans, and as they've been evolving for projects underway, putting those up on the website. I think the other thing that, worrying about the digital dusty, we have in old projects created very extensive master plans with a lot of guidelines. This is a very constantly evolving field with new research all the time. By linking and tapping into things like the NACDO website and making that a part of the document, we'll be able to kind of keep up the speed with the new research and the latest best practices by kind of keeping up with some national resources. Those are a couple other techniques.
Will there be, in terms of this whole keeping it not dusty, keeping it alive, presumably people will continue to go there and look, and there could be modifications. Is this something that should come back to council on a regular basis? Not for a complete review perhaps, but of amended changes on a regular basis, so that we kind of keep it in front of our face as well?
And I think it's important to continue to point out, the answer is yes. There is a component of this that we consider static, and that's the adopted plan, because it carries the weight of a complete streets plan, which is based on a state ordinance or state law. And it has weight when people consider doing work on our roadway system, whether it's MDOT or Oakland County.
So modifications would actually require council.
Yes, we would amend that static portion, would come back here for amended. The living portion, the information portion, and we did. We kept it 1 degree from the city's website because it does have an advocacy component to it, and that's intentional. It does go a little farther than the city's website in advocating for bicycle improvements, for non-motorized improvements, for transit improvements. And those components will be updated on a regular basis. It has a Tumblr account where we post things that staff or residents feel inspire them in relation to transportation. And we're talking about expanding that component where people can actually post things there and say, why don't you do this? You know, look at this. This would be something great in the city. And after we get done with this phase, our hopes are to focus on that living component of it and evolve that and hopefully get and continue the traffic, keeping it from getting too stagnant.
And if you look at the website right now, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 main tabs across the top. One of them is the plan.
Yeah.
You know, the other are already kind of living documents.
Yeah. Other questions, comments?
Just an additional comment. I had the same question about the site, but I think we kind of better on that. I also, on the site, there's 14 names listed that participated in the steering committee. So without reading all those, while we're thanking people, those 14 people on the steering committee just did a fantastic job. So I think it's worthy of recognition. And when you're perusing the site, check those folks out. So.
I have one addition. I think it's fair to say that this plan and April and the city manager's office and Lloyd have, kind of heard me pound my hand on the desk and everything. This plan and these types of improvements aren't possible in a lot of other communities. Without having staff here that are supportive and willing to consider it, even as much as I know that this probably drives Tim crazy too, they're willing to look at it, work with us, and listen to the information we have to present. If this plan's adopted and we put all this paint out there, I mean, Lloyd's guys are going to be painting from now till affinity. But he sits here quietly, and I think because of the direction and then from council and the other folks, it's been a real enjoyable process working with everybody.
I heard the police chief was going to start taking his bike to work. I don't know.
What?
That's how excited he is.
No, that's a challenge.
In the trunk of his car, maybe?
So it was a really enjoyable experience. It's not possible in a lot of places to do something that's this aggressive and this equitable for all users. So.
Other comments or questions?
For me, this is a no-brainer. I mean, we've been talking about this and implementing this for 4 years, if not longer.
Right.
And I would be hard-pressed to find anybody in the city that didn't hear about this, because I think there's been a lot of publicity from either here or just conversation throughout the community. And I know with the website itself, I've been working with it for the past 6 months. It's incredible. I was actually thinking maybe we could use this as a template for the master plan when we start working on our master plan in the park. I think you brought up, Derek, the Parks and Rec, and have this as a way of moving forward with those. So.
Well, I'm going to do the honor. I move that the Ferndale City Council adopts the Ferndale Moves website as the city's official Complete Streets and non-motorized network plan in conformance with the city's Complete Streets policy.
Support.
Oh, they're fighting for support. All right, so moved by Councilwoman Piana. I believe that was supported by Councilman Martin. Any final additional comments or questions on this item?
Excellent work.
Yeah.
Excellent job.
Good job, everyone. Appreciate it.
Ra.
Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Lennon,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The plan is adopted. All right, we're moving on now to call to council. Police chief, anything else for the good of the community this evening?
I have nothing further, Your Honor, other than to point out that Derek yelled at me for being too detailed in my
Let the record reflect.
Your Honor? Your Honor, I actually have a question for the chief, if he doesn't mind. During your presentation, you mentioned that Officer Goebel was part of the narcotic enforcement team. Is that the same team that some people in the community have accused of targeting older grandmas smoking marijuana?
Yes, and that is not true.
Yeah. Well, it's obvious that they're doing more than that.
Yes, they are, as I said during budget, and as I'll say as many times as you'll let me, and as Councilman Lennon alluded to during budget, is that we really get our bang for our buck there. They not only do they alleviate my detectives of having to do all the narcotics investigations locally, they are a resource that we call upon when we have these type of high-profile type crimes, whether it be the homicide that the patrol officers, he was here with his crew, and any of those type of things. So yeah, I know that narcotics investigations sometimes have a bad feel to them in some areas, but for the most part, these officers are very dedicated. They do a lot of work. They've been involved in not just narcotics investigations for us, many other facets. And I will tell you that when we send officers to that particular unit, we always send the best of the best. And Matt has proven that to be as well. His predecessors and the ones that followed him. I think I was in that unit too at one time. But no, but they really have, they really do help, and I thank you for the opportunity to say that, Councilman, because they, in that context, they've gotten a bad rap, and it really isn't deserved.
Great,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, anything from the HR perspective this evening?
Just a couple really quick things. We just late last week, received the final draft of our Care Here agreement to bring to council, hopefully the next council meeting. That would be our final piece of getting our health and wellness center up and running, so we're excited about that. And then lastly, we 2 years ago conducted an employee engagement survey, and we are working to finalize our update for that, and we'll be distributing and conducting that survey within the next couple months to gather some of that benchline data that we were hoping to get. So we'll be bringing that back to council as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Can I ask just a quick question to the chair? How's the Weight Watchers group doing? Is that still strong and functioning?
They're doing great. We're just getting ready to start. I believe it's our 10th session. We've lost about over 1,700 pounds in total.
Wow, fantastic.
I think we have like 32 members right now. So doing very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Fire Chief Sullivan, anything from the fire department this evening?
Yes, Your Honor. We've had a few house fires lately. And during
did you have one today, or did we cut the laundry budget?
Yeah, I apologize for that. No, we just had one in Southfield. We were able to pay our brothers and sisters in Southfield back with aiding them in a major commercial fire today over several thousand square feet of a recycling center lit up on the inside. And one of our engines with Sergeant Light, Engineer Warlow, firefighters Pichet and Helmick were one of the first units to charge in with the Southfield guys. We lost control of that, so we had to back them out. We ended up calling for Gage Products, brought their foam trailer over, so we tried to engage that. And I took a forward position for the Southfield command and paid for it with the overspray and everything going on. But it's still being brought under control. It probably will not be done with all the shredded plastics and cardboards and that and tight bales until sometime tomorrow morning will they be able to safely enter the building and mop up this thing. So it did quite a bit of damage. Not to just the building, but the environment was full of all kinds of nasty hydrocarbons
The one
today.
on Southfield Road?
They're just short of Evergreen, just north of 8 Mile Road.
Okay.
And it was, Maple Ridge is one of their entry points to it, and that's where the command center was.
And they're an
set up.
Oakway partner, correct?
They're an Oakway partner, and they've been, every house fire we have, they take over our station with an ambulance and an engine, so if we get another call to the citizens of Ferndale, Pleasant Ridge, or Royal Oak Township, they can handle it for us. And so we were able to pay them back today, because we were there came in a little bit after 1 o'clock, so I've been there about 5.5 hours.
No injuries or fatalities?
No injuries or fatalities. The command of Southfield did an excellent job. They knew when to pull everyone out, and the building went hostile on everyone. So we try our best, and sometimes we lose. That's what insurance is for. No people hurt.
Yeah. Great job. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Boyd, anything from DPW this evening?
I want to provide some information to the council. This will be the first of many updates on the East 9 Mile project. MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, has let the project. Prospective bidders have until June 6th to respond, and after which we will be scheduling. We have a meeting tomorrow with our partners in the DDA and the city's engineer to talk about a public information meeting, and and we will also, after tonight's comments, make sure that traffic is driven to Ferndale Move site, as far as public notification. Additionally, we'll talk to the Chief Innovation Officer to make sure that the city's website points them there as well. So the only further thing I would say is that just to reassure council that we're planning no work whatsoever during the Dream Cruise, significant event for the community, and work is tentative to start in July, ending in November. The final dates are undetermined at this time until after we find out who the bid winner is.
All right.
Great.
And just on that point too, the DDA is going to manage the communications much like they did on the West 9 Mile. We're going to follow that same plan. We're going to finish the details, but we've already got it dialed in and move from there.
Very good. We didn't have a Ferndale Moves type site at that point for the last one, so if we can.
Yeah.
Lloyd, I'm sure you want to remind everybody about the sewer grates during the rainy season too, right?
Yes, after today's rain, we had a number of citizens responding as well as DPW to help with some of the flooding on the streets. Fortunately, it didn't appear there was any property damage. We really did get quite some downpours at specific times during the day. And also we have several construction projects that are going on that kind of contribute to that because we have soil erosion fabric in some of the catch basins in order to catch that material. So our crew once again was out in the storm and using the Vector to suck out some of that material that came into the catch basins as part of that storm. But as of right now, all is well.
Great. Good. Thanks, Floyd. Jill, anything from the Recreation Department this evening?
Just a couple of quick reminders. We have 2 special events coming up. Our annual bike rodeo is coming up on Saturday, June 7th from 10 to 2 at Geary Park. The police department will be on site issuing bike licenses, performing safety checks, and also issuing free helmets. You must bring your bike to get a free helmet. Our second event coming up is our annual Trunk and Treasure Sale held here at the City Hall parking lot from 9 to 3 on Saturday, June 14th. We still are accepting vendor applications, so if you're interested, that information's on the city website, ferndalemi.gov. I also wanted to let folks know for the third summer, we will be a site for the school's free summer food program. So we'll be serving breakfast and lunch daily, Monday through Friday, from June 23rd to August 15th. Breakfast will be served from 9:45 to 10:45 a.m. and lunch 11:45 to 12:45.
Great.
Lunch?
Good. Thanks, Jill. Appreciate it. Marnie, filling in for Sherilyn this evening and doing a fine job. Anything from the clerk's office this evening?
Yes, I do want to just remind people that June 1st is the deadline to get your 2014 dog license without a penalty. Spayed and neutered dogs are $7.50. If you are not fixed or you cannot provide proof, it's $15. After June 2nd, the price goes up to $30 for all licenses, and Oakland County will be starting their animal census again this year, starting on June 2nd. So best to get in here, get your license from us before that happens. That's it.
Good reminder. Thank you. April, anything for the city manager's office?
Just a couple of things, just a friendly reminder that originally the Arbor Day was supposed to be tomorrow, but it is moved to June 4th at 11 o'clock. I did email you all to put it in your calendar if those who could make it. Secondly, tomorrow morning, we've completed all of the work we needed for EVIP number 3, this third component to get our revenue sharing. That will get emailed to the state tomorrow, so we will be in compliance. So just want to let council know that we should be receiving all of our revenue sharing for this year. That's all I have.
Great. Excellent. Dan, anything from the legal world this
Very
evening?
briefly, Your Honor, there was an individual who was stopped for a traffic violation a couple of years ago by the Ferndale Police, and this particular gentleman has filed a claim asserting a debt against the officers in the city to the tune of millions of dollars. A petition has been filed in circuit court asking the judge to have that UCC filing quashed immediately, and as soon as we get them served, I'm sure the judge will grant that relief, but that is was initiated last week.
All right.
And in the news this morning, on Detroit News.
I missed that. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
fairly large article about it.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem Martin.
Just a couple of things. The Ferndale Community Foundation is going to award its annual grant awards. In the past, we've done it here at the City Council. This year, we're going to do it at Ferndale Pride, as the foundation's the fiduciary for that event. And that's this Saturday. We'll handing out the awards and recognizing the nonprofits. So if you have any questions, check out the Ferndale Pride website for times and locations. In addition, Ferndale Youth Assistance is having what will be its annual Full Bowls fundraising event. All the proceeds goes to Ferndale Youth Assistance. That's on Saturday, June 7th from 1 to 4. It's easy like Sunday is where it's at. And for $10 per person, $6 for children 3 to 12, and children 2 and under are free. You can get a bowl, full bowl, so fill it with, yogurt and toppings and chocolate and whatever else you want to throw on there. They'll also have hot dogs, door prizes, raffle items, and a silent auction. So that's June 7th, 1 to 4 p.m.
Nice.
Yeah.
Councilman Lennon.
It's been really busy around town for the last 3-4 weeks.
Hasn't it?
I really have nothing other than it was a great job by all the events that were put on, Main Street, everything. It was just fantastic.
Councilman Polika.
Bark for Your Park contest is still going on. Go to www.petsafe.com and vote for Ferndale. We are no longer in second place. A number of other communities have stepped up their game. We're at like 367 votes, and there are cities with thousands now. But we could still come back.
We can take them.
We have till June 7th. That is the last day to vote. I want to thank all the volunteers that came out to clean the Ferndale up. The previous weekend, we had nearly 100 volunteers that helped clean up the downtown area, sidewalks, alleyways, parking lots, and then a number of teams that went out into the parks and cleaned up several of the parks. And one of the one thing that a lot of people said was they were surprised at how clean everything already was, that there wasn't as much trash as they expected. And that's in huge thanks to the DPW department and our director, Lloyd Curtin, who has been leading that wonderful team. And I also want to say a big thank you to Michael Leary, who did a great job of scheduling meetings for this event, ordering supplies, seeking donations from sponsors, and keeping Cindy Wilcock and I on task, really. The other thing is I'm looking forward to the 3 schools' graduations, commencement ceremonies this week and next week. I'll be attending all 3 of those. And this Saturday, Ferndale Pride is back on West 9 Mile. I was hoping that Julia would have been here to make the formal announcement, but she was unable to attend. It starts at noon. The vendor booths go till about 8 o'clock, but music goes till 10. Music and entertainment goes till 10. And it's going to be a great event.
Great. Great. Councilwoman Piana.
Yes, I wanted to give a couple updates on a few things. The Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission is looking at enhancing our ordinance to include natural landscaping. We are writing a section to include in the ordinance and working with the city manager's office at figuring out what would be a great rollout demonstration project to celebrate the ordinance after city council passes it. But we're in the working writing stages now, but expect to see that in a couple months coming to council. And this is all building towards another plan, creating another plan for the community. And it was clear that the city needs to look at creating a long-term sustainability plan. Lots of other cities have them. We are moving in that direction, but it's going to take another year or two to pull all of the elements that we have going into one document. I can't believe it, but after 2 years, over 2 years, the Woodward Alternative Analysis is coming to a conclusion mid-summer. And I have asked the consultants on the project to come and present to council on the locally preferred alternative option for Ferndale, and they'll be here by June 9th. And I think Derek and April are working with them to make sure that they're here. So some cities are passing resolutions expressing their general support for the project, and some cities are doing nothing. SEMCOG has indicated that it's up to the city to decide what it would like to do. I suggest that we look at passing a general resolution in support, and we have ordinances from the other cities that are doing that. So, and in addition to Ferndale Pride, I am going to express there are still open spaces for the Chamber's Rainbow Run. I have always told everybody that I have a mental problem, or not a mental problem, a mental block with running, but I'm still doing it. I have not been training at all for running, but I'm going to run the Rainbow Run, and so hopefully I'll complete it without the cop car following me in, like the DIY run. I like to, wrap things up. So registrations are still available. You can go to the website, rainbow-run.com, and register. That is it.
Excellent. I have some thank yous. I want to thank the Ferndale Memorial Association for putting on another outstanding Memorial Day parade yesterday, our 96th consecutive Memorial Day parade, the longest running Memorial Day parade in the state. They did a wonderful job, and the weather cooperated, and everybody had a great time out at the parade yesterday. I want to thank the Ferndale seniors for inviting me to a really exciting, really fun event, which is called Fourscore and More, where they recognize all of the folks in our community who are 80 years young and above. And we had a really nice luncheon at the Kulik Center, and it was great to see all of the folks there, and just a wealth of experience and knowledge in our community that's still a very vibrant part of our community. So that was really exciting. I want to congratulate our DDA for putting on just an outstanding event last Friday and welcoming the National Main Street Conference here. They did a whole lot of work, and I think really impressed hundreds and hundreds of folks who came to Ferndale and checked us out. So I want to give a particular shout out to our DDA and all the folks who volunteered to make that event such a success. And that's all I have. And so with that, our meeting is adjourned.